No, not that one. Hold on. There we go. You know, I was sat at home the other night with a glass of something brown, flicking through the channels for anything that wasn't a true crime documentary or a show about couples buying houses in Portugal, and I landed on Spider-Man 2. And I watched the whole thing, all of it. Didn't check my phone, didn't get up, forgot about the drink entirely until the ice had melted, which for a man of my habits is basically a medical event. And when the credits rolled, I just sat there in the dark with that very specific kind of low-grade despair you get when it dawns on you that you've watched the best thing an entire genre is ever going to manage, and it happened in 2004, while you were off doing something else. Anyway, that's the video. That's the whole thesis, and I'm not going to pretend I've buried it somewhere clever. My fellow degenerates, the last good superhero movie came out in the summer of 2004, and everything since has been a 22-year argument about whether anybody was paying attention. Now I know how that sounds. It sounds like a man in his 40s telling you his knees used to work, and I'd tell me to piss off as well. So let me actually make the case, because honestly, I don't think this is nostalgia, and I think I can show you more or less where it went. Right, quick bit of theory first, and I'll try to keep the film school crap to a minimum. A superhero movie works when the powers are the problem, not the solution, the problem. The suit has to cost the guy something he actually wants, and the film has to be honest enough to show you the bill, in specifics, with the numbers on it, the rent.
Give me rent.
You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!
The job, the girl, the life he was supposed to be having before the spider turned up and bit him. Because a man who can lift a train is not a character, he's a special effect. But a man who can lift a train and still can't hold down a job delivering pizzas is a character, and the gap between those two is basically the whole genre. Get it right, and you can put whatever mad nonsense you like on the screen afterwards, and people will sit through all of it. But get it wrong, and what you've got is $400 million of light and noise about a generic guy with no problems punching a forgettable guy with no personality, which is more or less every trailer I've sat through since about 2016. So let's talk about what Raimi actually did here, because I don't think a lot of people remember just how strange this movie really is. Spider-Man 2 opens with its hero getting fired. Not beaten, not humiliated by a supervillain, not failing to save the city. Fired from a pizza delivery job by a furious little man with a stopwatch for turning up 90 seconds late with an order he'd carried across Manhattan by swinging between skyscrapers at 60 miles an hour. And that's the first thing the film tells you about him. 20 minutes in and he's broke, he's failing physics, he's late for everything, his aunt is about to lose the house, his best friend blames him for his father's death, and the girl he loves is in a play he keeps missing because somebody keeps setting fire to something. He's got the powers of a god and the bank account of a man going through his coat pockets at the checkout, and every expensive minute of that movie sits on top of that one joke. But then Raimi does something nobody has had the balls to do since. For the first time in the series, he takes the powers away. Not cleanly either. The webs start misfiring, the wall crawling gives out halfway up a building, his eyesight goes, and he ends up in a doctor's office describing it as a friend's problem, the way you do when you're 22 and mortified, and gets told the whole thing is probably in his head, like he's got a stomach complaint. And think about that. This is a $200 million summer blockbuster with a scene where the hero goes to the doctor and finds out his real problem is he doesn't want to do this anymore. Try getting that past a studio now. Try getting it past the 11 people who have to sign off on the trailer.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that? What is that, Private Pile?
So he quits. And here's the thing that gets me, because the movie doesn't punish him for it, it makes quitting look great. He dumps the suit in a garbage can, and his grades come up, and he turns up to the play on time with flowers, and there's a montage set to Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, and for about 10 minutes the movie makes a pretty persuasive case that this kid should probably retire and let New York look after itself. But then he walks past an alley where a guy is getting the crap kicked out of him, and you know what? He keeps walking. Nobody says a word, no speech about responsibility, he just walks. Right, the train. Yes, fine, at this point it's still the best action sequence the genre has ever produced, and I'm aware I'm the 9,000th man on the internet to say so. But look at what it's actually doing. He stops the train by standing on the front of it and webbing himself off to the buildings on either side, and Raimi just holds on it while the lines stretch and his arms come out of their sockets and his back gives out. It's not a power, it's a man being slowly pulled apart to slow down a piece of rolling stock, and then he collapses and the passengers catch him. That's your payoff. Not an explosion, just a bunch of commuters with no powers and no armor and not one quip between them, passing an unconscious 22-year-old back over their heads, looking at his face and going, he's just a kid. And then they stand in front of him, office workers, putting themselves between a man with 4 mechanical arms and a student who'd been failing physics that morning. Every superhero film made since has had bigger stakes. Not one of them has had that. And the villain isn't a plot device either. Otto Octavius is just Peter 30 years on with all the wrong answers behind him. Clever guy, kind of arrogant with it, loves his wife, builds something beautiful, gets her killed with his own ambition, and hands every decision he has left to a machine. Like a guy handing his keys to somebody who hates him because that's easier than sitting with what he did. Even the ending won't hand you a clean win. Otto drowns his own life's work rather than stay the thing it made him, and Peter finally gets the girl, and the last shot of the movie is Mary Jane at the window watching him swing off to work, and she isn't smiling. She looks terrified. Roll credits. That's your summer tentpole. A woman in a wedding dress working out that she's just made a horrible mistake, and it still turned out to be one of the biggest films of the year at the box office, because audiences will sit through an awful lot if there's a person in it. Now before somebody types at me in capital letters, I can hear you: The Dark Knight, Logan, Into the Spider-Verse, Winter Soldier, The Batman, Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one before it turned into a job.
Ooh, child, things will get brighter. Now bring it down hard. Someday, put it together.
Merci, Gaston.
I haven't finished.
Oh, pardon, Gaston. 1,000 pardons, monsieur. Now, this...
Some of the best films of the last 20 years, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise just to protect a nice, tidy argument. But look at what they've all got in common. The Dark Knight is a crime picture that happens to have a cape in it. Logan is a western about a dying man driving a car. And The Batman is a detective story that seems faintly embarrassed to say the word Batman out loud. Every good one since has worked by sneaking out of the genre and doing something else instead. Spider-Man 2 is the last one that stood there in broad daylight in red pajamas, played it completely straight, and got away with it. So what happened? Well, a few years later, somebody at Marvel worked out that you could sell a movie like an episode of television, and from that moment on, nothing was ever allowed to finish. Because at the end of the day, a cost is only a cost if it stays paid. I mean, if your hero loses something in Act 3 and has it all back by April because he's in the crossover, then he never lost it. He mislaid it for a while. And the writers know that perfectly well, so they stop reaching for anything a character could feel and start reaching for the only stakes that machine will let them use: the universe, the timeline, the multiverse, everything, which is another way of saying absolutely nothing. And yeah, I'm aware this all sounds like pretentious crap from a guy who reviews films with a drink in his hand, but a lot of very well-paid people seem to have missed it, so here we are. Anyway, the other problem is the money, and this is where it gets kind of stupid. Spider-Man 2 cost a couple of $100 million and spent it on 20 minutes of train, a burning building, and some tentacles, and worst month of his life. But you can't make that movie for $400 million, because at $400 million, you need every territory on Earth to turn up, so the story has to work with the sound off, which means it ends up playing like a fight in a shop window. Objects hitting other objects in front of a wall of LEDs. On the other hand, it isn't really that the budget raised the stakes. It ate the only part of the movie anybody ever gave a damn about. Which brings us to the funniest part of all of this, because they ran the experiment, before us, with the same character, the same city, and the same web shooters 15 years later. Marvel's Peter Parker gets handed his suit by a billionaire. It's got an AI in it, and a heater, a parachute, 576 web combinations, a talking assistant called Karen who does most of his thinking for him, and an instant kill mode, which is the kind of thing you put in a Spider-Man movie and then forgot to have a single character be horrified about. Jesus wept. But he isn't broke. Aunt May is about 40 and doing fine, and there's no rent, no job he's about to lose, and no physics he's failing, because a mentor with a private jet took away every obstacle the character is made out of. Remember what I said about the powers being the problem? Here, they're the prize. He isn't a kid who can't have a life because of what he can do, he's a kid who gets a better one out of it, which turned out to be a much worse story. That being said, credit where it's due, because Homecoming has one sequence in it that gets it completely. He's pinned under a collapsed building on his own, screaming for help that isn't coming, and he's got to lift the whole lot off himself because nobody else is coming. It's more or less straight out of the comics. It's the best damn couple of minutes Marvel has ever shot, and it works for exactly one reason. They took the toys off him, and then they spent the rest of the trilogy handing them back.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
Anyway, then there's the end of No Way Home, and I want to talk about that one because it's the purest example of this disease I've ever seen. The character's central problem finally lands: the double life, the secret, the reason any of this was ever supposed to hurt in the first place. Everybody on Earth knows who he is. It's great. The consequences are enormous, and not one of them is allowed to happen. So a wizard turns up and does a spell, and everybody forgets, like somebody wiping a whiteboard. That's it. That's the resolution. 20 years of one of the most valuable characters in fiction, and the answer was a magic undo button. And then they filmed the audience clapping about it. No, get off. You don't get to spend 20 years building a character out of what things cost him, and then charge people $15 to watch you delete the bill. And anyway, once you spot it, you can't stop seeing it. Thor spent a whole movie doing gags with screaming goats, while a woman died of cancer in the same runtime. And it never once worked out whether it wanted you laughing or crying. But here's the part that actually depresses me, because in 2022, Marvel hired Sam Raimi back. Same man, the same director who shot the pizza scene, and they handed him Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, a film where death doesn't stick and every character exists in infinite versions, so nothing in it was going to matter, and he shot the hell out of it. There's probably more filmmaking in that thing than in the rest of the slate put together, and it doesn't matter, and it can't matter, because you cannot make anything cost anything in a multiverse. They got hold of the one guy who proved this could work and sat him down at the machine that guarantees it never will again. Meanwhile, Sony, who owned the actual character, spent those same years putting out Morbius, Madam Web, and Kraven the Hunter. 3 films about the friends of a guy they weren't allowed to use, like a tribute band that isn't cleared to play the hits. I mean, what can I say? You don't need me to tell you how that went. So no, this isn't nostalgia, and I'm not telling you that 2004 was some kind of golden age. The same year gave us Catwoman, a film that exists. But the point is that, at the end of the day, Spider-Man 2 is the last superhero movie willing to be small. A movie about a broke 22-year-old who can't get the girl, can't pay the rent, can't finish his degree, and won't stop. And every dollar of spectacle in it is paid for by that. Everything since has run it backwards. And make no mistake, that's the whole trick. Start with the spectacle, work out afterwards what sad line the hero can say to justify it, and hope nobody notices there's nobody in the suit. 22 years, several hundred films, and tens of billions of dollars at the box office, and not one of them has had the nerve to fire their hero from a pizza job. And the fix isn't complicated either, which is basically the part that makes me want to put my head through a wall. Stop asking what your character can do, and start asking what it costs him. Give the man a rent problem. Let him lose something. Let it stay lost past the end of the credits, even if that makes the next one harder to write, because the difficulty is the job. And if the honest answer is that the machine won't let you make that kind of film anymore, then have the decency to say so out loud, and stop selling us episode 12 of a television show at theater prices. And rant over.